speaking today about the Zoom interviews, which is the latest to join in our crazy COVID world. Aisling, I will hand over to you. The floor is all yours.
Thanks a million, Ruth. Hopefully everyone can hear me now okay. And just let me know if you can't.
I can hear you. Okay, I'm giving you a nod there. I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna talk about this exact thing. It's so strange. My internet was working all morning, and the minute I go to log in, 15 minutes in advance and everything with the advice I'm going to give you, it just went on me completely, and I had to do the restart and everything. So apologies. I'm sorry because
no worries. No worries.
So yeah, you can see me okay. I'll just move the camera a little bit and then we're good to go. Thanks so much. Okay, so hello everybody. I'm just going to start my slideshow now. As I say, absolute apologies. This is exactly what I'm going to discuss today, is about the virtual interview and things that can go wrong and how to expect it. So I will be using my own story now as we go. So just check my cameras working there all right and everything. Okay, perfect. So hello, I'm Aisling. Sorry, the camera keeps running up. Apologies, thank you. So I'm Aisling from Aisling Healy Coaching. I have years of HR and recruitment experience, and I know the virtual world is completely new to everybody in light of COVID, etc. So we've all had to adapt, and I've worked with managers and employees on how to adapt towards that. So I'm looking forward to speaking to you about that today. Daily on interviews, techniques, career development, just over 80 clients. Since then, I have a new job search strategy workbook that's for free to download as well, that can help you with different various like interview questions and different techniques that you might need on like the interview and get onto your dream job, and any issues that you might have. Or anything that you want to clarify, make sure that you write it into the group chat, and Ruth will let us know as well. Don't forget to take notes, ask questions. Today is the interview and what to expect. So that this is the Tech Job Expo. So I'll be covering a little bit about what to expect in kind of the technical interview and the other factors that you might need to know, because I worked in an IT consultancy for 3 years, so I have a good knowledge and experience of what all of the hiring managers want, the directors want when it comes to the interview. I will be talking as well face-to-face interviews and virtual interviews, the similarities. So things like you might have already prepped for, you've already learned that you can absolutely use in the virtual interview also, and then how to prepare for the virtual interviews themselves. So like that, I will be talking a lot about the areas that you have to prepare yourself for and things that you can not expect as well to happen. So we'll be discussing that too. So let's get started. So the interview, what to expect. So I know that interviews can be very nerve-wracking. I know it's nobody really likes to be examined in a sense, and can struggle to talk about themselves, their achievements, their accomplishments. But one thing that's very important is it is your opportunity to sell to the employer. So make sure that you really are prepared for this, because this is what's standing in the way between you and your dream job. And I suppose the other factor that's really important to note as well is that sorry, just make sure that I'm still on there. Yeah, perfect. Another factor to note is you have been called forward for interview. So your CV, you're matching the role, you have the technology that's required, you have the skills that's required. So just make sure you remember that going in order to build your confidence that they are interested in you, and you just need to do that extra sell to get yourself forward and land your dream job, essentially. Interview for an IT role. What corporations like Fames that I've worked they're assessing. So like that, if they might ask you about location, they might ask you about your salary expectations, they might ask you, why do you want to work here? So when you are applying for roles, make sure that you are looking, when you're applying for those roles, of the reasons why you want to go with that company, or why you actually are interested in that role. So what I always suggest is to keep a little like Excel sheet, a simple Excel sheet, that will track the applications that you're applying for, because when you get that call, you want to make sure you know the company that you applied for and why you applied for in the application that you used. So that's usually the first round. Then once they're happy enough that you fit the criteria, they invite you for a face-to-face. So this can be very different. So I know when I worked in the IT consultancy, when we were hiring for technical roles, I usually did a phone interview, and then I would do the first round with a technical manager. So like that, it's to ask the technical questions along with the cultural fit, which is a really important aspect that I want to just quickly talk to you about. So when you're going in for those technical roles, I understand that you might prepare everything when it goes to like the languages, IT, writing code, whatever it might be. So you might be ultra prepared for that, but it is also important that you are being assessed on your cultural fit. So like your personality, would you fit in with the team? So always have examples prepared like that on teamwork and your fit on what you like, what your values, and matching the values of the company as well. And you can usually get that from the job description, what kind of areas you can get a good fit, a vibe of what they're like, what they expect as well. So that's always important too. So there'll be a mix of questions, as I just mentioned, of technical based and competency based. So technical based, just really do prepare everything. So anything that you've put down on your CV in terms of languages that you know. I've been in the interviews where the technical managers would just say, can you write me this code based on this user case, for example, or they might just throw out a technical question and might take you off guard a bit just to test your knowledge and competency in that area. So just be prepared for that, because I know it can throw you off a little bit when you're not expecting it, the technical question, but also prepare questions and based on your experience, or prepare your experience so that you're ready for questions on it, and competency-based questions. So they're very much, what would you do in this scenario, or can you give an example of where you had to, like whether you had to deal with a difficult team member, or that you had to influence somebody around to your way of thinking. So depending on the role, so if you are really technical based, then and you're dealing with clients, they want to know how you interact with clients. You might be technical based and not dealing with clients as well. So it's always good to prepare based on the job spec that you have. And remember, when you're going for an interview, you're interviewing them also. So I always like to add this in when preparing for interviews, and interview coaching in particular, because I know that you go in, you're a bit nervous, you're hoping that you do well, that you perform well. But it also is important to note that you are working at your, like, this is the company that you want to go in. You want to make sure that you're a good fit and that they're a good fit for you. So do they match your values? Do they match, like, are you happy with the culture? Like, are they expecting you to work 12 or 14 hours, or are they expecting just like that 9 to 5? Are they flexible? Like, all of those things are very important for you as you go in, because you want to make sure that you're happy going in there also. So what you can do there is you can prepare questions in the interview to ask at the end. So it's always the infamous ask questions at the end, and then you're not sure what to ask. But I always like the question was like, oh, how would you describe the culture here? Or what would you expect of the candidate or of the person that starts in this role? I always think is quite good as well. So what I was discussing was about the virtual interview and the differences that you can expect with the face-to-face and with the virtual, essentially. And what I was going through was that you can expect a lot of the same, particularly when you're applying for kind of technical roles. What to expect is like 2 to 3 rounds that you're being assessed for role and culture fit. So you have your phone interview, you have your like technical face-to-face, you might have a HR, you might have a technical manager, because that's what I had. And you will be assessed on your role and culture fit as well, because that's one thing that when I worked in IT consultancy, that a lot of people didn't realize maybe that they were being assessed on their fit in terms of how they'll fit in with the team and the culture kind of aspect of it as well. So there's a mix of competency-based questions, technical-based questions, and as well to remember with the interview that you are assessing the employer as well as them interviewing you, essentially. So you're interviewing them. So So make sure it's somewhere that you really want to be, that you want to go, somewhere that you like, you know, match your values with, whether it might be with flexibility, their working hours, holidays, like all of those are really important aspects to take into account as well. So make sure to have questions prepared, always questions that were quite good that I liked to be prepared, like to be asked as well, was like, what do you like about working here? I always thought that was a good question because it gives them an idea of what a day-to-day is kind of like there. And as well, I would ask the questions like, what do you expect from the candidate from working here, so that you have a good knowledge of what they'll expect of you and if it is something that you're aligned with. So that's great. And then in terms of face-to-face interviews and the virtual similarity, so I'm not sure I got cut off if you were joined earlier, and thanks so much for staying tuned as well, but the face-to-face interview and virtual similarities. So when you're preparing for interviews, you have to remember that you are being assessed in the same way as the face-to-face interview. So it's the same preparation that you would have, like whether it's the questions that you prepare. The only difference essentially is that you're not going to the location or planning out your route, but the questions that you prepare, like when you're, how you practice out loud, what you're going to wear to interviews as well, I know, because you still are being seen, the top half anyway, and like looking at job specs and things like that. So always be prepared the same way. You're being assessed the same, it's just virtually this time. Prepare competency-based questions and technical-based questions. So competency-based questions would be what would you do in this situation, for example. So they might put it specifically to the role, ask you either about projects that you've done or how you would approach projects going forward, a problem that you solved. So whenever you're preparing competency-based questions, the best questions that I like to prepare for is a problem you solved, a process that you improved, and maybe like a significant achievement. So always give in what the situation was, the action that you took, and the result of it. So it's always important to say like the action and your result, and always try to pick a positive one as well, because we always want to make sure that you have the positive result from it as well. So then look at the job spec. So when you're preparing for interviews, whether it's virtual or face-to-face, prepare looking at the job spec. So what I always encourage my clients is to go through every line by line and make sure that you can answer it. So whether it's a responsibility, can you say I did do this or have experience with it, and the requirements particularly. If you don't worry, because you're not always going to match everything out with the job spec, but just have it prepared of what would you do. Say for example, if that you're not really aware of, for example. So you can say, okay, well, I don't have specific experience when you're asked, don't bring it up, but if you're asked it, that you say, I don't have specific experience with the technology, but I have been looking up on YouTube, or I have been looking up on Reddit, or I have been studying it online via whatever online platform. So just make sure that you kind of prepare, you know, like that, have everything prepared, have questions prepared, because you could be asked anything off the job spec and you want to be prepared for that. Practice is always really important. So practice out loud, practice with a friend, practice with, like, you know, in front of a mirror. I know how some people say don't, but I found that really helpful when you're talking, particularly for, say, for example, now when I've started doing the webinars and trainings online, it can be a bit daunting at first, like you can see yourself in the screen. So like that, just make sure that you like practice, and then that way when you're practicing, you'll feel more confident when you go in for the interview. Know the company inside out as well. So why that's important is that when they ask you a question, and if they ask you something about like maybe what, like why do you want to work here, is always a really important question. Why do you want to work there? So is it the values? Is it something that projects that they've been working on? Is it something that, are they a leader in their industry? Like, so always have it prepared, and it's good for you to know why you want to work there as well, but it also shows that you've done your research, that you know the company, and that you're like happy to work there. And it really does all give off a really good impression. Like whenever I was on the other side, when I was doing the interviews, when they could tell me like different things that projects that they've seen or something like in the news, is always really helpful as well. So just know the company inside out, so that it's good that you can prepare that way. And as I mentioned before, have questions prepared at the end. It is a bit deflating when you have like when you ask a question at the end and there's no answer, like they're like, no, I'm fine, because it helps build that little bit of rapport at the end to say, okay, I've been thinking about the interview, I've been thinking about this, and I would love to know a bit more about it. So you can ask things like, okay, can you tell me a bit more about the role, if they haven't already? And like that, I mentioned, it's really good to say, can you describe the culture here, what's expected of a candidate candidate like when they begin working here. So they're always good kind of questions to ask. Or another one is always like, what challenge are you facing at the moment? So what challenge, like what's your biggest challenge, and how do you see like you're going to overcome it? So it'll give you an idea of the challenges they're facing, and you might have an idea to say, oh, actually, I have an answer to this, for example. So that's always good. And preparing then for virtual interviews. So that's the face-to-face. We've gone through like what to expect, how to prepare for it, and then preparing for virtual interviews specifically. So now I've had my own experience. I can definitely tell you of what it's like. So obviously we'll go through and about planning for the unexpected. So the first thing that I would say is plan your location. So where are you going to have the virtual interview? Is it going to be in it's best obviously to get into a room that there's going to be nobody else in. Make sure anybody that you're living with, whether it's housemates, family, or anything like that, that you tell them I have an interview and I need to dedicate this room, please don't come in. Your background as well is important. So make sure that if you have like just a tidy background or like that, you can put up a screen or like something in the background just to so that it's kind of focusing on yourself and yourself as well. Just make sure that when the way you're sitting, that you're kind of showing your head and shoulders, and that you're not kind of like too close to the screen, or you're not like really far back, for example. So like this it is a good position to have. So plan your location, test your software. So test your software, test your camera, test your microphone, test your headphones or your speaker on your laptop before you go in for the interview. So once you've run through all of the and the software that they're going to use. So are they going to use Zoom? Are they going to use Microsoft Teams? Are they going to use Google Hangouts, which they could use? Whatever it is that they use, they'll send you the invite on. Make sure that you test your software as well. Log in early. So log in 10-15 minutes early. Make sure that you can hook up, that your internet connection is stable and it's working. And if it's not, don't panic. I'll talk about that in a second. But log in early to like for anything that can go wrong, just to allow it to go wrong and overcome it as well. So that's logging in early. And then body language, build rapport and break the ice. So what I mean by this is, because you can't go in face to face, you can't shake hands, you can't do any of those things that you normally would be used to doing when you're going in face to face. How do you build rapport? So like that, you can still log on, you can still talk to them, saying, like, how are you keeping? What do you think of the weather? Have you been on summer holidays? Anything that can kind of build rapport and break the ice. How are you finding working virtually now? Or how are you finding since, like, how long have you been working virtually? Any of those questions is always good when you log on, and make sure like that they can see you, hear you, etc. And then body language. So be really careful of body language, because they can't see you like in person. They still can see the top half of you, for example. It's always important to build your body, like, so be aware of your body language. So what do I mean by that? So sit back in the chair like this, kind of this angle, and smile and nod. So when they're talking, smile and nod. And while you can't make eye contact like you would face to face in person, you can make sure you're looking at them. Like, don't be looking away, don't be looking to the side, don't be looking down. Make sure that you're looking at the screen, looking at them, so that they know that you're engaged. And like smile and nod and like that. When just, I know that it's a bit hard, particularly over Zoom, sometimes when you talk at the same time, one person gets blanked out. So I understand that as well. So, but just smiling and nodding can really help as well, and making sure that you're looking at the camera. And on that point, don't rely on notes. So don't be looking off to the side, looking at notes when you're answering the question. It just doesn't come across well on camera. You wouldn't bring them into a face-to-face interview. So just try avoid them as much as you can when you're doing the virtual. If you do want to take notes on what they're saying, you can just say, oh, I just have a notepad here, I'm taking notes on the role and the specifics that you give me, if that's okay, so that they know when you are looking away that you're still paying attention. So here's one, is expect the unexpected. So like that, even though you could be online, you can be testing your software, you have planned your location, things still can go wrong. So for example, for me today, I was logged in 10 minutes early. I made sure everything was working. I had the camera working, everything was perfect. And the internet just cut for me just as I was about to log on. So it does happen anyway, even if you have prepared, even if you have tested. So just expect for that and allow for that. Make sure you have the phone numbers of the interviewers, so that you can call them and say, I'm so sorry, my internet disconnected, or there was loud noises or something, like a fire alarm goes off or something like that, so that you can call them and let them know, so that they can expect that like you are going to log on again, and remove all possible distractions. When that does happen as well, don't panic. I know I was a bit nervous there when it did happen, because it's the first time it did happen for me, but don't panic. Look, just say, look, what can I do? I'm going to call them. I'm going to let them know, either reschedule, see if you can log on, and don't overthink it as well. Just say, look, think logically, what can I do to log on? Because that can happen in the virtual world now, as I've experienced today, and apologies again. So yeah, and then after that, remove all possible distractions. And I suppose the most important is just to be confident as well. Don't worry too much the fact that you can't build the rapport. I'm conscious I'm finished now, that you can build rapport, and that you can, like, you can still sell yourself. Just keep practicing as you normally would. So I think that you're there. Sorry.
Well, fair play to you. You got through that in the
I
end.
know, I ran through it there. I was like, what can I say that's important? But
you know what, it was great. It was like your top 10 hits of what to do, and technical glitches happen to us all. So it was great to be able to get you back.
Yeah.
And do you know what I really enjoyed about you speaking that time, is that being able to see your hands in the shot.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
That I could kind of see that you were demonstrative, and you were engaged, and you were mobile and moving. And anyways.
Yeah. That's true. I actually always talk with my hands as well, but no one ever sees it because I'm dead. But you're right, now you can see.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing to see, actually.
Yeah.
Especially I just find on Zoom, because it can be just sort of from shoulders.
Yeah, like there.
It can be quite sort of static. So it is nice to see the movement. Aisling, I'm going to leave you go at this stage. Just remind us again where people can get in contact with you directly.
Yes, perfect. So it's aislinghealycoaching.com. If you just pop onto my website, I actually have a free job search strategy workbook that can help you build your CV and job search strategy. I just launched it this week, so make sure you pop on and download your copy for free as well. You can get me on Instagram, Aisling Healy Coaching, and on LinkedIn. I think a couple of people have found me already, so that's fantastic.
Brilliant.
So yeah, and listen, thanks so much, Ruth and Cormac, as well, and thanks for having me. It's always a delight.